Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to another episode of my challenge. For context, I am going to have an exam in 8 days, and this is day I don't know what of the challenge. So like day 9. It's day 9 because I'm recording this late again. So what I did today, I did 2 readings and 2 listenings. I probably should have done a writing and speaking instead, but I didn't do that. Basically, I figured out that the grades that I've been doing, I took like 1 point off for every wrong answer that I had, but that was not the case. Actually, you should look back because some questions have 1.5 scores and one have 1. So actually the grades are different, which means my grades have been probably inflated a bit, but here it is. So the first one that I did, I got a 24 out of 25 for listening. I had 1 wrong question. And for reading, I got 21 out of 25. I had 4 wrong questions, so it could be lower, maybe, I don't know. But I had 24 minutes and 45 seconds extra. For the second one, I got 19.5 out of 25 because this time I took into account like the 1.5s and stuff for the listening. And for the reading, I had 17 out of 25. No, the other way around. I had 19.5 out of 25 for reading and 17 out of 25 for listening. For the reading, I had 24 minutes extra. So in this video, I'm gonna talk about how to do better writings. First of all, I'm no way to be giving advice on how to do it in French, but generally the language exams are the same, and I had twice an IELTS degree, like a certificate of 8. So I know what I'm talking about. However, the way that you want to talk about the logical structure is very simple actually. So first paragraph, you want to reintroduce the problem or whatever they're saying, you want to say it again. So for example, they say, a lot of people say that in France, kids are more and more dependent on their devices instead of actually like learning from books. What is your opinion? So like the first thing that you say in the paragraph is, in France, a lot of people are concerned with the time usage of the students and how much time they put into their screens instead of actually studying with books. So you just paraphrase the question in the first paragraph. The second thing you do is you need to have both sides. So when they ask for your opinion, you need to have an opinion. So basically you're going to say, I agree or I disagree. However, if you say I agree, you will go be like, I agree because A, B, C, and disagree because of this. Or you say, I disagree because of A, B, C, and agree because of this. So basically, my rule of thumb is that I have, the rule of 3. Basically, the rule of 3 is that everything feels complete and rounded up in a group of 3. So I usually go like my opinion. There are 3 reasons for it. However, you should always consider the opposite side. Even if you strongly agree with something, always consider the opposite side. So the side that you don't agree with. So for example, say I am for this argument, then I would say because of A, B, C, I I am in agreement with this argument. However, because of this aspect, it might not be completely like that. And then at the last paragraph, so this was the body of your writing, and the last paragraph is basically you go for a conclusion. So for a conclusion, what you just want to do and what to say is, to summarize, because of ABC, this is a good idea, but because of that, it might not be for everyone, or it might not be complete. So you should always criticize yourself too, but just a little bit, not too much, because then you will look uncertain. So always have one side that's like overpowering the other side. Now that that's out of the way, I have other tips also. What I do personally is that these structures are not going to go anywhere. So you if you memorize the structure, that makes a lot of sense. And when you memorize the structure, you can memorize it with like some phrases that you will use in the exam too. And this helps you to like have better vocabulary for those phrases, which is important. So for example, for me, I go the first paragraph, paraphrase the problem, and then I go tout d'abord. So first of all, tout d'abord, blah blah blah. And then for the next one, I go ensuite. You can also use à continuer or par continuer. Then for the third one, I usually go la troisième raison. You could also use, for example, par ailleurs. So basically to add. And then for my reason against my argument, I go cependant. Also, you could use au contraire. A lot of things that mean but, but in a sense that's fancier. And for the end, I use en guise de conclusion. So basically to conclude, but I use en guise de conclusion. You can also use en conclusion, or for example, pour conclure. And basically that's how I structure it. Then I will always use at least one example, so par exemple, blah blah blah, and share something personal or something that happened to me. It could be false, like I could be lying, but I will share that to support my argument. Then there are some words that I know that I can use a lot. For example, davantage, which means more. So it's like a word that you usually use a lot of places. So that word, you can also like use other words for this, but I think davantage has like a higher level compared to other words, and that's why I use that. So I wouldn't go for like extremely niche vocabulary, but like generally the vocabulary that you know, and the vocabulary that is like you will use 80% of the time. Another honorable mention is grâce à plus nom. That is like a positive thing. So blah 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 happened grâce à blah blah blah. If you want to talk about something negative, you can use à cause de plus nom. So blah 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 happened à cause de blah blah blah. Another helpful thing is that aider, which is something that you use a lot because something is always helping something else. But aider comes with à plus infinitif. Par exemple, cet expériment m'a aidé à comprendre blah blah blah. Comprendre une langue étrangère. So these are like the collocations that I would go for, like the most common vocabularies and the things that you will use most likely. And that's it. Probably tomorrow I will talk about some tips for speaking. See you until then. Bye bye.